On April 16th, 2019, we received the release of AGL-LR Super Saiyan 2 Caulifla and Super Saiyan 2 Kale. This Joint Forces character was vastly beyond our expectations for how strong a Dokkan character could be, and truly set a standard for the future of Dokkan battle. Now, 6 years later, we just received a new version of this character. Physical Super Saiyan 2 Caulifla plus Super Saiyan 2 Kale did release on May 15th, 2025, which is the day I'm recording this video as well. Today we're going to be talking about this character and everything there is to do with them. I hope you guys do enjoy the video and this helps new players or just players in general figure out if you should summon for this character, or if you did get this character, how exactly you should build them and their best situations. So sit on down and let's hop right into it. Now, to start things off, I want to talk about the most stand-up thing of this character, which is the fact they are a reversible exchange. This means that when conditions are fulfilled, you are able to switch between Caulifla and Kale at your discretion. Keep in mind that until turn 6 and onward, you are only going to be able to stay as Caulifla and will not be able to switch out into Kale at all. And we'll get into that section specifically once we are able to. So their leader skill is Universe 6 category Ki plus 4 and then HP attack and defense plus 220%. We'll talk about this more in the team build section, but this category is still lacking a lot and leaves much room for growth, right? Now, Caulifla's passive skill is Challenge Not to Be Missed. She gets Ki 6 and 200% attack and defense, then launches an additional attack that has a 70% chance of becoming a super attack. Now, this is very standard, I would say, for characters nowadays. Besides the Ki 6, I feel like Ki 6 is quite generous just for a starting boost. I feel like many characters will start up at Ki 5 even, Ki 3 usually, but Ki 6 is pretty good. Now, when receiving an attack for the first time within the turn, Caulifla has an 100% chance to dodge that very attack. So, no matter what, that first attack, Caulifla is going to be basically invincible for it. Outside of bosses that do disable characters' chance to dodge, Caulifla will be sitting very nicely in that first spot potentially. Along with that, before receiving an attack within the turn, Caulifla gains 20% additional damage reduction. Now, 20% reduction by itself isn't really too major, but that's where we can get to the next part of their passive. After evading an attack, Caulifla gains 120% attack and defense, launches a guaranteed additional super attack, and it gains 40% damage reduction rate for 6 turns. So now we can kind of see what they're going for here. You place Caulifla in slot 1, she'll get that dodge off instantly, will get a huge chunk of stats, be able to get another super, and will have 60% reduction until she actually receives an attack. After that, she'll go back down to the 40% because she'll lose that aforementioned 20% damage reduction, right? Along with this, for every attack performed, Caulifla will gain Ki plus 2 up to Ki plus 6 and 40% attack and defense up to 120% attack and defense. Now, this is a buff that will stay permanently, so you're going to see all of these stats before Caulifla even has to attack. And that could help her a lot, especially when it comes to living normals before she actually will get her own attacks off. Now, keep in mind that the two 120% buffs are actually phase 2 buffs as we call them. That means that they are multiplicative and will lead to larger numbers than if it was just, say, a basic effect. Now, this is really good because it will allow her to potentially even eat some early on super attacks. And for the most part, you could tell this character is designed to really be out just in the 6 turns for the most part. So you could really tell that they designed her in that specific way where she won't really be in danger until later on during these fights. Now, with 23 key spheres obtained, she will be able to guaranteed dodge all enemy attacks within the turn that are aimed at her. Now, 23 key spheres is the same amount of key spheres as all the orbs in the field, so you may be wondering how she will be able to even get that ability. And here's where we could talk about the reversible exchange a little more. Starting from the 6th turn from start of battle, she'll meet up with Super Saiyan 2 Kale, and then you could start to perform the reversible exchange. But once only from that 6th turn onward, she'll change all key spheres on the field to physical key spheres, which is the same type of this character. That means that you're able to grab all 23 physical key spheres, and Caulifla will have a guaranteed chance to dodge during that turn, which is really, really good. Now, this character does have pretty good super attack effects as well. So on the 18 key or above super attack effect, she will greatly raise attack and defense 1 turn, which is a 50% raise. She'll cause a mega colossal damage to enemy, and raises her own chance of evading enemy's attack by 26% for 3 turns. That will of course be able to stack over to the next turn as long as you keep her in slot 1 or slot 2. She'll return back in 2 turns and will be able to overlap that buff, which means that on her second 18 key super attack, if you keep her on rotation as we call it, she will be able to get a 52% chance to dodge once she's able to super. Beyond that, with every 12 key super attack she'll perform, she will get 30% attack and defense for 1 turn, colossal damage to the enemy, and give herself 6% chance to dodge on top of that, and 6% chance to crit. The critical hit chance is nothing really too special. I think it's just there just cuz, but that 6% chance to dodge is very impactful. As we see in her kit, she has the additional with a 70% chance to be a super, and the guaranteed additional super attack for those 6 turns. So because of that, she could get up to 3 additional super attacks if we also count the hidden potential system. This means that she can actually add up to a total of a 70% chance to dodge if you do get very lucky, which is definitely a good thing, right? 70% chance to dodge I think is a pretty good norm, like an average for characters that are relying on dodge. The only issue I would say potentially with this character could be that she gets so much dodge only after she attacks. So as a character designed in slot 1, some of the harder hitting super attacks can catch her off guard if, let's say, she dodges the first attack, she receives the second attack, and then the third attack before she even is able to do anything is a super. That could really be an issue for her because with just a 40% reduction alone, that is not enough to tank some of the harder hitting supers. But that's why from turn 6 onward, you are actually able to exchange over to Super Saiyan 2 Kale, which we'll go ahead and talk about right now. Super Saiyan 2 Kale is more of a tank character in the sense where instead of being reliant on dodge, she just has straight up a lot of defense. Kale can perform the reversible exchange with Caulifla, of course, at any time. She gets 200% attack and defense and guard, which means that she will always be type advantage against any enemy in terms of defense. When attacking for the first time within the turn, she performs a critical hit, so that very first super attack she does will always be a guaranteed crit, which is really, really good. When attacking with 12 or more keys, she gets 100% attack, and when attacking with the active skill or attacking at 24 key, she'll gain an additional 200% attack. So hitting 24 key is going to be a very, very important thing for this character. When receiving an attack, she also gains 66% defense for every key she's at. Now keep in mind, this is not every key sphere she obtains, but every key the character is at. So if you're at 24 key, you're actually going to get 1,584% defense, which is a huge amount. Keep in mind, this is the same thing where I talked about earlier. This is a phase 2 buff, which means that it is a multiplicative that will lead to some very huge numbers, especially if you consider support on rotation. Things can get a little crazy. Now, with 6 or more key spheres obtained, she'll launch 2 guaranteed additional super attacks, But if you give her 23 key spheres, she'll have another 2 guaranteed additional super attacks. And the idea is that on turn 6, when Caulifla changes all key spheres on the field to physical, you could either decide to give them to Caulifla for a guaranteed dodge turn, or you can give them to Kale, which will be able to get a lot of extra damage dished out. Now, if we talk about the super attack effects, on her 18 key super, Kale massively raises attack for 1 turn, causes mega colossal damage, and raises chance of performing a critical hit by 26% for 3 turns. Just like Caulifla's dodge that will last over multiple turns, and their 18 key super attacks can actually affect the other character. For example, if you get Caulifla's 12 key super or her 18 key super off, and then switch into Kale the next turn, Kale will actually keep that 26% chance to dodge. Same thing with Caulifla. If you use Kale's 26% chance to crit 18 key super, then you switch over to Caulifla the next turn, she will keep that, right? On top of that, Kale's 12 key super attack does greatly raise attack for the turn, causes colossal damage, and then raises chance of performing a crit and chance to dodge by 6% for 1 turn. So Kale can get herself some pretty decent chances to crit, up to 70%, same as Caulifla, once she gets her super attacks off. And the really good thing is that that first attack will always be a guaranteed crit, so you don't even have to worry about her 18 key ever not critting, or you're missing the 50% chance. Basically, you will be good to go with that first super, which is really huge. Now, one thing that you may notice is that Kale does not have any key in her passive whatsoever, unlike Caulifla, who can get up to 12 key. And you may be a little worried considering that this is a character that does want to be at 24 key. But that's where we could talk about their active skills for a bit. Now keep in mind, with this character, you can only use either Caulifla's active skill or Kale's active skill. It is one or the other, and that can be used from the 6th turn from start of battle, so essentially the same condition as the reversible exchange itself. For Caulifla, she'll cause ultimate damage to enemy and give Universe 6 category allies key 1 and 16% attack and defense in battle, which is a very generous buff as a support ability. That itself is another separate buff even beyond phase 2, which means that it is gonna lead to some very good numbers for Universe 6 category allies. Keep in mind though, Universe 6 is a very specific category, so that's why the buff is as good as it is. Now if you choose to use Super Saiyan to Kale's active skill, it will cause ultimate damage to enemy, then give her key 6 and 40% attack in battle, which again is a pretty substantial buff on an active skill. This means Kale will start to do a lot of damage, especially on that turn with the 23 key spheres. Kale's gonna be one of the harder hitting characters in the game, which is really funny. In terms of like especially Carnival LRs, that turn she could output quite a bit. I've seen her melt down a lot of these, bosses with so much HP with ease on that active skill turn. And again, even beyond the 23 key spheres, she will keep that key 6 and 40% attack. This could also potentially help her out with certain key issues on other teams. Now keep in mind, on their own team, they will get key 4 and a lot of these links will be activated, but we'll go ahead and talk about that in the linking partner section. Essentially, if we want to make things very easy, Caulifla is early on a slump 1 dodging character. Then later on in the fights, you could bring Kale out for a more consistent tanking plus huge amount of damage, kind of finish off these bosses with huge HP. I think the general design for this character is really good, and while there may be issues sometimes, of course no character is perfect or flawless, so I'm actually a fan of this design overall. I think they made them very interesting for a tag character. Now, when it comes to their link set, LR, Kale, and Caulifla have a pretty good set of links to work with because they're a Super Saiyan, right? There's many Super Saiyans that are top tier in the game, of course, so they're gonna be having a good time in terms of working with other characters. To name them out, Super Saiyan, Battlefield Diva, Warriors of Universe 6, Prepare for Battle, Tournament of Power, Fierce Battle, and Legendary Power. So there's a lot of key in these links, which I think is very, very important, especially when it comes to Kale. Because at certain situations, Kale may have some issues with actually hitting the 24 key, especially if you don't use her own active skill. Now, in my personal experience with the partners that are available, I don't really have too much issue with making Kale hit that max amount of key, especially if you at least hit Prepare for Battle and maybe Tournament of Power. That bare minimum will be 5 key, but if you have them linked up with another Kale and Caulifla character, they will be getting an additional 5 key in total from Battlefield Diva and Warriors of Universe 6. This is of course intending that you have the links fully link leveled at max rank, which is level 10 here. Now, in terms of partners that I think will be really good for them that are relevant right now, I think the best partner for them is STR Caulifla. Now, for the very first turn, STR Caulifla will only share 4 links with them, but once STR Caulifla is transformed, she will gain the Super Saiyan link and share a total of 5 links there. Now, not really the exact perfect partner with all 7 links, but she'll work just good enough, and STR Caulifla is still more than runnable in a lot of these different events, though in the hardest content in the game there will be an issue. And that's where we come to the issue with Universe 6 partners in general. There's not really a relevant one for them to truly work in all the difficult content with. AGL Kale is a Dokkan Fest that released in 2023. At this point we would like an Extreme Z Awakening for her. LR Kale and Caulifla were also an EZA from, the previous years, and unfortunately the AGL one specifically, not really the best right now. Then we of course can talk about Tech Kale and Caulifla. As of this recording, Tech Kale and Caulifla have not received an Extreme Z Awakening, but I think it's all more than likely that they will get an Extreme Z Awakening once, the next week does come around. Maybe let's say the 21st-ish range or so like that, right? We're not really 100% sure. But if they end up being a good EZA, then they could actually work really, really well with this new character. And that's what we're all hoping for. Beyond that, again, they do have the standard Super Saiyan, Prepared for Battle, Fierce Battle, Legendary Power link set, so you can link them up very well with most of the anniversary LRs. In fact, all of the anniversary LRs that released this year do share 4 links with them at bare minimum, which is really, really, really huge for this character. Beyond that, if you are running them as a leader, there is the option to actually run them as a rotation later on in the fight. When you're able to switch over to Kale, you're actually able to link the 2 characters together, because Kale would be named Super Saiyan 2 Kale plus Super Saiyan 2 Caulifla, whilst the Caulifla would be named Super Saiyan 2 Caulifla plus Super Saiyan 2 Kale. That is obviously a reverse and allows them to actually work just like the 10th anniversary Dokkan Festival LRs, which can be very, very useful. But again, the link set is not really too big of an issue. I think no matter what, it is a very consistently good link set that will have a lot of characters work with them with. From here, we're going to talk about their best team/categories that they can be run on. Now, this character is on a total of 16 categories, which is very expansive. So there are a lot of different situations where they may be usable. Of course, this is, and thanks to them being a tag character, they will get the categories of both characters affiliated. Now, at this point, I'm only going to be talking about 220% leader skills, and that is the new meta, and those will be considered their best teams that you should run them on. On top of that, they're on a couple of very relevant 220% teams, and I want to highlight the few that really stand out to me. First and foremost, we will be talking about their own Team Universe 6 because it is their own leader skill. Now, again, they are 220% to Universe 6 solely. The issue with that team is that Universe 6 is just not it right now. Unfortunately, Universe 6 does still leave a lot to be desired. There are some characters you can run, STR Caulifla, Int Hits, maybe Physical Magetta, right? He's probably going to be a nice little floater for you. At times, you can get away with Tech Caulifla. She is a character that will guarantee dodge against Universe Survival Saga or Pure Saiyan characters. But beyond that, I think things really fall off a cliff. We really need that Tech Caulifla and Kale to get an Extreme Z Awakening. Let's assume that is the case though with an Extreme Z Awakening and assume that they're also good. We can run a team setup of Super Saiyan 2 Caulifla, then we have Tech Caulifla as one rotation, then the other rotation could be Super Saiyan 2 Caulifla plus Tech Kale and Caulifla as well. Then you could also substitute in STR Caulifla instead of Tech Caulifla depending on the situation. Then floating around you could have Tech Hit, Physical Magetta, and then either the Tech Caulifla or the STR Kefla, depending on what kind of event you're running. Maybe you want to keep one on the rotation over the other. But even then, it's still a very, very small group of characters that running this character as a leader can be a bit of an issue. What you can potentially do is run them under Int Hits team, which may be a better viable option. And that's what I think might be one of their better setups as well. You have Int Hit as your floating characters. Then you could have Super Saiyan 2 Caulifla with another, STR Kefla is what I actually usually ran. Maybe in the future we could use Tech Kale and Caulifla as well. Then the other rotation could be whatever you want. It could be the Cell rotation. Maybe you could even have both of the hits together as a rotation later on in the fights. I think that could work out pretty decently fine as well. But no matter what, this team definitely needs more options to the point where I think we might even just need a whole other celebration in the future. Maybe a Dokkan Fest Caulifla card. Then we can get the AGL Berserk Kale to get an Extreme Z Awakening. And I think, once we get these extra characters, maybe even a sub EZA for like Int Kaba, super EZA for Tech Hit, like we could really start talking about, okay, this team is super set up. Ideally, maybe we also get Extreme Z Awakenings for the physical hit, the Salno and Pirina, and the STR Champa, right? These characters got Awakenings last year for the Tanabata celebration. If they would get Extreme Z Awakenings during Golden Week, that would also be ideal. Just more options is really what this team needs to be genuinely competitive if they want to go ahead and do so. Now, beyond their team, they are also on the 220% leader scale for the 10th anniversary Super Gogeta team, as they are a pure Saiyan and a gifted warrior category character. Now, they actually work really well on this team, and you don't even need to run them with any Universe 6 ally. The reason why is because the team has a couple of relevant orb changers. You could say Int GT Vegeta. Super Gogeta himself can eventually create Rainbow Key Spheres. If you run Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta on the team, he also does create Rainbow Key Spheres. There's a lot of characters that will really help out with the key consistency with the Kale especially. You have full power Super Saiyan 4 Goku, or AGL Super Saiyan 4 Goku, I'm kind of dumb. He can provide the multi-turn support to Kale, who doesn't have any defense on the super attack effects. On top of that, he can give her 10% additional damage reduction, which can be extremely good for her being a slot 1 tank. AGL Gogeta has the active skill, which could super power up this character as well. I think the AGL Gogeta team is definitely the most runnable team that they're on so far. Now, you could also try the Blue Evolution Vegeta team as well. He does provide Rainbow Orb Changing, so with 2 Blue Vegetas floating around with Rainbow Orb Changing, I think that could be very useful. And you could just run a nice little Universe Survival Saga setup, maybe bringing some of the Universe 7 characters in there. You could throw on AGL Jiren potentially. I think that could all work pretty nicely. Now again, this character is also on other teams such as the Tech Blue Kaioken Goku team or STR Cell, but Tech Blue Kaioken Goku really does want a full Rapsum Universe 7 setup, so I don't really count him as a really good setup for this character. STR Cell is leaning more towards an extreme class setup, I feel, so whilst you can run her on the team, I feel like you would much rather run her with characters that are Universe Survival Saga or just pure Saiyan based. You also do have the Super Saiyan 2 Gohan full power team, but I feel like this team doesn't really have as many Rainbow Orb Changers as you would ideally like that are at least super relevant. So because of that, I feel like that team might not be a really good fit for this character either. But those are pretty much all of their relevant 220% teams. Again, mostly just sticking to their own team and AGL AGL Super Gogeta's team. You could run them on Tech Vegeto's team, but they only get a 170% there, so there you go. Now, while this character will be able to thrash pretty much most content in the game, we're going to be focusing on just the most difficult stages because that is the stages where they could potentially struggle. We're going to be talking about red zone stages, battle hardened formidable foes, and festival battles. I think those groups of recent stages are the most difficult in the game and where you could potentially prioritize your summons for. Now, just to get it out of the way, Festival of Battles is not a stage this Caulifla and Kale are going to be eligible in, and that is because they are not a character that stacks any attack or defense. Usually that fight will only allow stacking characters, as we call it, so because of this character is pretty much not going to be like defensive enough or offensive enough by the time you reach the end of that event, where these characters are doing 25 mil, 30 mil super attacks. Kale herself may barely be able to tank normals by the end of it, so she is likely not going to be a character you're running in there. Now, we get to really focus on red zones, however. When it comes to red zones, they are much more competitive, and I think that's where they're able to be their best at, actually. So first thing, we're going to be talking about the Goku story red zone, as I think that is one of the harder red zone events in the game right now, and talk about the Universe Survival Saga stage. That Universe Survival Saga stage where you fight against Jiren at the end is very tough. Now, I did talk about this earlier, but throughout most of the event, you will be as Caulifla, and these bosses aren't really hitting too hard for Caulifla to struggle. Usually, I've seen her reach about a mil defense or so start of turn. This is, of course, at the rainbow level. And with that in mind, she has the potential to get 60/40% damage reduction. So even before she attacks, she will be more than capable to handle a lot of these bosses' super attacks. At the bare minimum, you will not be able to get one shot. She will also have the ability to dodge some of these boss super attacks, depending on where they attack or how you get lucky with the 26% chance. Once you reach the Int Jiren phase, Caulifla is still very, very good there, and especially if you put her, say, on the Gogeta team and you float her around. What will happen is Jiren has an ability to lock your units in place, but he does not disable dodge in that Int phase. Another thing is that he will always super attack the very first attack he does in the rotation, which if we take a look at Caulifla's passive again, she guaranteed dodges that very first attack. So if she gets locked in slot 1, or you have to place her in the first spot in the rotation, not only does she have type advantage against all these normal attacks, but she will also guarantee dodge the super, which would have stunned her otherwise. This could be a very, very valuable tool in that fight, as the locking can be extremely devastating for a lot of characters, especially if you're running floating characters that aren't really going to be too great in that situation, right? Now, once you get to the AGL Jiren phase, you 100% have to switch to Kale. There's really no reason otherwise. AGL Jiren does disable evasion. That means that Caulifla is not going to be able to dodge at all, and she'll be in a very tough spot as her raw defense is just not enough to live against Jiren's super attack. However, Kale is able to live against Jiren's super attack. Depending on the situation, she can herself still take a lot of damage because she is just a defense character, a raw defense character. She does not have any damage reduction. And another thing is that Kale will not be able to kind of have her guard because Jiren does crit on his super attack. However, in some situations, I've seen Kale take very little damage. I mean, if you see in this clip here, she only takes about, double digits pretty much. There's a clip, I believe, where I got 88k damage that she took. It's very dependent on what team setup you have. But again, on that Gogeta team, I was able to have her tank very well. Albeit we had Super Saiyan Gogeta's active skill up, so that's a huge boost for her. But there are times where she's able to look very impressive even in that stage, along with being able to dish out a lot of damage against that Jiren, who does have quite a bit of HP. So Kale herself looks very impressive in that final phase. And even in the Int phase, if you are able to, let's say, keep Kale in slot 2 and use her active skill, there's not really a way for you to get all 23 key spheres if you do that. However, she will be able to still dish out quite a bit of damage against that Jiren as well. So I think she does pretty good in the Goku story red zone. Now, I do also want to mention the Blue Vegeta mission. There's a Universe 6 mission for that stage, and that is the final stage in the Goku Story Red Zone. While that fight isn't particularly tough, Vegeta is also another boss that will instantly super attack you on every single turn, which means that Caulifla will always dodge that Blue Vegeta super attack, so she's going to be a very safe slot 1 character for you. So if you're having troubles with that Universe 6 mission, this Caulifla, even just as a friend character, will be absolutely perfect for you there. And once you get Kale out, again, she'll be able to demolish that. It almost makes me think that this character was made in mind for that Universe 6 mission, but who knows. Next, we could talk about the Vegeta story event as well, which does also have a Universe Survival Saga stage. Now, this stage is designed similarly to the actual Goku story stage. You could debate between which one of these two are harder. For this character, I would say the Vegeta stage is harder because of the fact that Topo is a type neutral character, but he's also not always going to super attack you instantly. Topo also can eventually hit harder than the Jiren phase as well. So depending on your build, depending on where he super attacks you, it could be a lot more dangerous than just knowing Caulifla will always dodge the super attack. However, I don't think it's that much of a deal because I believe that Topo does also have, if not the same HP, but relatively lower HP. I don't have the stats in front of me as we're speaking about this, but I feel like that Topo usually is able to get melted down pretty relatively quickly. Then we get to the STR Jiren phase, which does disable evasion. However, this STR Jiren does not crit. He doesn't really do anything but just the raw damage. That is really good for Kale. Kale is actually able to eat the super attack very well. I think I mentioned 88 damage earlier against the AGL Jiren. Kale is actually able to take this super attack for relatively the same amount of damage or even less because she's not worried about getting crit or anything. Her defense plus guard is more than high enough to be able to eat these super attacks for breakfast basically. Kale has no worries whatsoever against this STR Jiren, and she'll be able to do some, again, pretty relevant damage to him. So I think that this Kale works very, very well against this difficult stage. Now, the one stage where this character is not going to be good in is the Super Saiyan Blue Goku fight, stage 10. Unfortunately, that fight does disable dodge throughout the entirety of it, which means that Caulifla is caught in a pickle. Caulifla is not going to be good whatsoever. She's going to take a lot of damage from normals. There is the situation where maybe you float her off and you float her off again. Then you can get Kale out. Kale will be pretty good in that fight. But it's just doing a lot and risking yourself for no real reason pretty much. So I would say this character is close to being a non-factor in that fight if it wasn't for how effective Kale could be in there. And again, if you throw her on the Pure Saiyans team or something like that, it won't be as big of a deal. But the Universe 6 setup in general does just not work well in that event. So now we'll talk about battle-hardened formidable foes. And realistically, I'm not really a big fan of this character in that stage particularly either. I'm mostly talking about stages 8, 9, and 10, which are the hardest stages. I think that this character can work though, pretty nicely though. Now, I don't think that they're a consistent slot 1 of this event just because Caulifla is more designed for these red zone stages, and then you can build up to Kale, allow Caulifla herself to have time to build up. You want these characters to be strong from the get-go rather than building up to something, so that is an unfortunate thing for Caulifla. However, she could still be pretty decent as a slot 3 character. And one other thing is that the stage 8 Universe Survival Saga stage will allow her to be a slot 2 character because of the fact that Tech Caulifla will have her guaranteed dodge. So you could just run the SSR Tech Caulifla and the TUR Tech Caulifla, then have the new LRs in the second slot for each rotation, and you're looking pretty good if you're running a Universe 6 team. However, this is only really effective in that 8th stage. Anywhere else, the Tech Cauliflas will not have guaranteed dodge, so it could be very dangerous. They take one attack and you are dead. Now, if we're talking about stage 9 and 10, one thing about this Caulifla is if you say float her on the Pure Saiyans team, is again, she will guarantee dodge the first attack that she'd receive. At the very end of these stages, both the legendary Super Saiyan Broly, well, actually this is full power Super Saiyan Broly, and the Cell Max have an AoE super attack. But Caulifla was always going to dodge that super attack if she's in the second or third slot because of the fact that they're going to super you, let's say they super you in slot 1, they will attack all characters, but that would be the first attack they receive in the turn, which they will always evade. So that's where they can be very decent in this fight still, even though they're not particularly the greatest. You won't ever see Kale in this fight either, so that's why I'm gonna say, you know, they're fairly decent, right? Especially on the Pure Saiyans team, but nothing particularly crazy. So if we overall rate their effectiveness across the difficult stages, I would say they are a pretty good character for Red Zone. I would say they're a pretty decent character in the Battle Hard and Formidable Foes, and a non-factor in the Formidable Battles. So overall, let's say just in general A rank, if we're gonna say something like that, right? Let's say S rank is the best of the best. A rank is still pretty good, just not great. From here, let's get into hidden potential system. Now that we've talked about how they will work in these difficult fights, let's say what are the best builds for these kind of events. Now, first and foremost, are dupes even necessary for this character? If you take a look at Super Saiyan 2 Caulifla, she's eventually able to get a 70% chance to dodge. She has 2 built-in additionals, but she doesn't really have any critical hit chance herself. But if we switch over to Kale, Kale's able to get guarantee crit on the first attack she does. She will be able to build up to 50% plus chance to crit. She does have 2 built-in additionals if you get the 6 key spheres, potentially 4 if you get 23 key spheres, but she doesn't really have a lot of dodge in her kit. Because of this, I would say overall, Caulifla is designed to be defensive, so her getting critical hits don't really matter, whilst Kale already has crits as an offensive character. So I would probably switch over to some variant of evasion still, just because Caulifla only gets that 70% dodge rate after she gets a lot of the attacks. And as a slot 1 character, it will be useful for her to get as many dodges as possible, just so that 60% reduction is saved even more so for emergencies. On top of this, Kale dodging definitely doesn't hurt at all, and since these characters are a physical character, they will have a lot of additional in the hidden potential system regardless. So I'm gonna say if you have, let's just say 2 dupes for example, I would go about 15 dodge, 11 additional, just generally aiming for that level because of the fact that crit is not really important on the character here that will actually do damage, which is Kale herself. Now, on top of this, we could talk about equipment here. I think you don't really go wrong either way with an offense or defense equip in the bronze slot. Maybe you can go ahead and go for dodge or additional, that works too. With the silver slot, definitely go either additional or dodge. And then with the gold slot, you can kind of play around with maybe a defense dodge, maybe an offense additional, right? Some people may want crit in their Kale as well, just to make sure they crit as much as possible. And if that's the case and you really want to go a full crit build, you can just get a bunch of these crit attack equips in there and potentially do a lot of extra damage. Now, again, when it comes to dupes, I feel like this character isn't a character designed to need any dupes in them. But with Kale, that raw defense that you'd get with the extra stats will help out quite a bit. And you, of course, will see a difference between like 55% or even 69%, 79%, things like this. But I don't think it's going to be a total game breaker for the character. Outside of certain situations, maybe AGL Jiren could be an issue, but I think this character will relatively be fine across difficult content regardless, so I don't think it is necessary to go chasing dupes for this character. And with this, we could segue into, should you even summon for this character in the first place? Now, I would say the global Dokkan celebration is upcoming very soon. It is announced to be releasing in July. Right now it is May, so you really want to go ahead and not summon and save your stones for that as much as possible. But let's say you really are a huge fan of Caulifla Kale and you want to make sure that you're able to grab a copy of this character. Keep in mind there is no pity on this banner, so you may have to go a few hundred stones potentially, even though this is a double rates banner. But there's still some decent options there. You have Tech Go Tanks as another option. This is the first time he's returning. I think that he is still quite useful as a Rainbow Orb Changer across a bunch of these different teams. I mean, if you're running the Gogeta team and you want a Rainbow Orb Changer, this could be really helpful for the Caulifla and Kale. You could run AGL Jiren across some of these Universe Survival Saga setups, could also be helpful as a multi-turn support in his standby form. LR Hit and God Goku are a decent option and will work really well with the new hit, in which they'll become a really great option. If you somehow don't have Tech Caulifla is going to be a fantastic partner for them in certain events where that character can get guaranteed dodge. STR Kale maybe could be a decent filler option on Universe 6, but from here, the rest of the characters aren't really too relevant. At best, STR Dispo can put some decent numbers on like a Pride Trooper setup, but not many people are going to be running that nowadays. From here, though, again, Global Dokkan Celebration is upcoming where the anniversary LRs may return, and Caulifla could potentially be returning during a Tanabata celebration in September or for the December Carnival. So a lot of these characters are going to start having quick turnarounds. So maybe you could say, I'm going to prioritize one of these major celebrations first, then whatever stones I have left over, if I really want Caulifla, I can go ahead and do so. Now, we also have the free tickets. If you haven't used those free tickets, definitely go ahead and do so as well. Overall, for pros and cons of this character, I think that they have a great link set. I think that them having no restrictions is also really nice. They're not restricted to just Universe 6. I also really like the ease of key that Caulifla has. However, in terms of some cons for this character, their leader skill is definitely not effective across most of the difficult fights in the game. I think you're going to be really struggling in many situations. On top of this, sometimes Kale may have key issues outside of the Universe 6 team, which hurts really badly in the fact that the Universe 6 team is not that great. But for the most part, I think you can make things definitely end up being good, right? One other thing you could potentially see as a con is that they're not really effective in festival battles, but I don't really think that's as big of a deal because they're pretty decent or good across the other fights in the game. So I'm not going to hold it and call them like a complete negative because they're not that, but stacking will always be a useful tool to potentially have. Regardless though, I think this character is good, and if you did go ahead and summon for them, I hope you do enjoy them. Otherwise, I would say it is a generally safe skip because of the fact that Global Dokkan Celebration is going to be here again. I really want to stress that point. But thanks y'all for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll catch you all in the next one.